Top Girls is a play by Carol Churchill, which was performed first in 1982 in Britain at the Royal Court. It's essentially the story of Marlene. The play starts having a celebration for Marlene, who has just been appointed managing director of an agency called Top Girls, which is an employment agency. Churchill starts the play as a kind of a success story. Here's something we should be celebrating. Here's a woman at the top. Isn't that something to celebrate? And then what the play does is it kind of undoes all of these assumptions that you've made, and it says, what exactly are we celebrating here? You don't get to the top without it being at the detriment to somebody else. Really, it's asking who are the people that have been left behind, that for every one of those, there's somebody like Angie who's pushed to the bottom. The opening scene of Top Girls is in some ways for an audience to interpret, what that is. In terms of stage directions, it's a restaurant. But then into that space emerge these women from history. They're all dead. Some of them aren't even real, they're fictional. So all of these women come together to celebrate Marlene's promotion. And what you find is that these women have shared experiences just by value of what it is to have grown up as a woman in an essentially patriarchal society. And also they have kind of radical assumptions about what the people sitting opposite them from the table should have done based on their own kind of prism of experience. You kind of think, oh well, these women, maybe they don't have things in common because they're from different cultures or different times. And then when we meet the women in the office scene, the scene later, we think, oh well, now we're in London and all of these women are from the 80s, so now they'll be speaking the same language, but you see that actually the same thing happens. These women are making assumptions about each other and judging each other, and they may as well be from different cultures or different time frames because of the experiences that they've lived. And then you're sucked into this world of Suffolk, which is the world of her sister and her niece. And you think, oh well, if they didn't have anything in common, this group at the dinner table, I know why. And then maybe the women in London, the employment agency, well, they're divided too by various factors, but surely these two women who are sisters will have a commonality, and you find that actually they're divided too. When this play was first performed, it was 1982, so I kept saying to the cast, you kind of have to imagine that, for an audience in 1982 sitting there at the Royal Court, when Marlene says, I think the 80s are going to be stupendous, it's actually that they're looking into the future, that audience. They're sitting there thinking, God, what is the 80s going to look like? Because here we have Margaret Thatcher dismantling our society, and here we have, America that's just going, gangbusters for kind of Wall Street and, consumerism. I think this coincided really with an interest for Carol Churchill in the idea of feminism and what that meant. And feminism in the UK had been really closely aligned to socialism and to the working class. So that was the kind of feminism that she understood. And she went on a trip to America around this time in the early 80s, and she said she was really taken by a different kind of feminism that was emerging in America. It was a very individualist kind of feminism that was very oriented around this idea of success and being a top girl. In some ways, the play is trying to reconcile the difference between these two types of feminism, an individualist feminism versus a collective feminism. And at the same time, it's trying to reconcile the fact that with a female leader, you make assumptions about the fact that this person will have women as part of their agenda. And what happened was it wasn't the case at all. The overlapping dialogue is something that Carol Churchill employs really heavily in this play, and it was something that I think she was really a pioneer of. So what Carol Churchill does is that sometimes there are two key plot points that actors are saying at the same time, and they can be really important plot points. And at that point we were in the rehearsal room saying, okay, which story do we follow here? Do we go with this one or this one? And sometimes I couldn't decide, and I said, look, you both just have to get your story across, and the audience will choose which one to listen to. At other points, there were things that I said, actually, this thing is more important than this thing, so you go under and this person will go over, and we really scored it in that kind of detail. Dave Fleischer and Renee Mulder and I, when we first sat down to talk about the design, talked a lot about the unknown, so that you kind of didn't know the thing that was in front of you, which is why we're using like blackouts, kind of prolonged blackouts and pockets of light within an abyss of darkness. And we also talked about the fact that, you know, this is a piece that's set in the 80s. We didn't want to move it from the 80s because it's so kind of tied to Margaret Thatcher. But we needed to fracture it outside of a kind of a totally naturalistic space. So what we've done is we've taken slices of realism but put them within kind of voids, so it's able to speak more to a kind of universal, timeless experience. Top Girls is a play that asks questions, and those questions are really political. I think she's a really political playwright, you know, in the same way that Brecht is a political playwright. She keeps throwing us out of the play, you know, she's not pulling us into it, she keeps throwing us out, so we never know quite where we are or what's about to happen next. And I think what that does is it reminds us that we're kind of having to watch this with fresh eyes every time, and that actually political arguments are happening in front of us. But I think she's asking questions about personal responsibility and about the responsibility of society to people in positions that are less privileged than ours, you know. And I think that's the wonderful thing about her work. It doesn't answer any of those questions for us, but it really activates the audience to start thinking about that stuff.